Hello, I'm Neil Thind of Arun Associates and London Party Wall Surveyors, and this is Nick Huband of William J. Marshall Structural Engineers and Architects. This is the second of our joint presentations where we are going to look at chimney breast removal and the Party Wall Act. We will be focusing primarily on structural issues, structural and operational issues that need to be considered by building owners carrying out chimney breast removal works. So Nick, my first question, which I'm going to start with, let's start by asking, why would you want to remove a chimney breast or flues from a property in the first place? So assuming that they're of masonry construction, you want to remove the chimney breast, what's the general reasoning behind that?
Basically, in most cases, the client simply wants more space. It's at a premium in London. You probably won't be able to use your fireplace, Clean Air Act and everything, so it's just an encumbrance. Sometimes people make a feature of it, other times they want to get rid of it. Yeah. So the question is how to cut out the chimney breast without upsetting the rest of the building.
Okay, so the reason why the Party Wall Act comes into force is basically you're removing you're removing a party structure. Just on some of the structural issues then, Nick, if you can explain the structural matters that need to be taken into consideration as part of a chimney breast removal.
Yeah. Chimney breasts are very major structural elements. Yeah. They're quite thick, they go to the top of the building. Yeah. There's a lot of massive masonry involved in there, so you need to be quite careful about cutting away the supports beneath. For example, by removing a chimney breast on one side. Often you'll find the case that you've got chimney breasts on both sides of a party wall, you're taking away one side, suddenly you're removing a degree of support from the wall up above. Yeah. And need to ensure that the wall's kept stable. Now, normally in the lower stories, if you look at this little sketch here, yeah. You can see what happens when you're taking away a section of the chimney breast. You're left now with the core wall, which is fine on the other side. You've probably got enough stability. You put in a gallows bracket in here so that you don't lose any material above. Here we can see the gallows bracket here supporting the cut brickwork up above. Now that's absolutely fine, provided you're only doing it from one side. The difficulty is that if you're removing your chimney breast and your neighbour's already done it, now you're cutting away the brickwork on both sides of the wall and you're left with quite a substantial height of masonry up above, supported or balanced, should say, on this small section of wall. If you look at a little sketch here, you can see this is the chimney breast here, and you can see the unbalanced case here. At the moment, that chimney breast, for example, as sometimes happens in London, you'll find that these chimney breasts have been removed and there's no support work being done. The chimney is now balanced here and supported only by the roof ridge up above and possibly by the ceiling joists, neither of which are major structural elements. So if that ever happens, you then need to start thinking about structural input. Now the case we're looking at though is where you've taken away your chimney breast and you put in a gallows bracket, and that's fine. But if we now look at where your neighbour has already taken his away, that's when you start to need a slightly more complicated structural intervention.
Absolutely. So that's where the problems of a destabilised or unstable chimney stack can come into
effect. Yes,
that's
right.
Yeah, absolutely. You said in this situation here ceiling joists, and you're showing these ceiling joists and roof joists. These ceiling joists are actually going into the party structure, but there might be a situation where they don't necessarily go into the party structure, so they span from the front of the building to the back. So they might not even be restrained to there. Even at ceiling level. Yeah.
And that's when, if you get a high wind, remember your chimney stack is now extending above the roof by a metre or so, yes. You get bad gales or something, and it's not unknown for chimney breasts actually to collapse onto the building. Yes. You've probably seen it in case you see it in the news. Absolutely. After serious gales. So this is something that needs to be taken quite seriously. And
particularly if the chimney stack hasn't been properly maintained. So even higher risk.
Yes. Yes, because right at the top of the building, they've been burning quite sulphurous coals over the years. Yes. You get sulphate attack on the mortar. The sulphur in the coal then condenses on the inside of the chimney stack, or deposit on the inside of the chimney stack. A bit of rain, a bit of moisture, you're getting sulphuric acid now eating away at your mortar.
Yeah.
So these chimney breasts can be actually in quite poor condition.
Yeah.
And often it's well worth, if you're doing serious works in the building, to get your builder up to the chimney stack and get him to have a look at it.
Yeah.
And make sure that the pointing, the flashing all around it, everything's in good condition.
Absolutely, yes. So if you have a situation where one side has already removed their chimney breast,
Yeah.
what then needs to be considered for the building owner who now confronts that scenario? So Neighbour has already removed their chimney breast on their side of the party structure. What sort of considerations do they need to have in place?
Now, your building owner is now in a slightly trickier position that he needs to now provide a significant support to this chimney stack to avoid the risk of it toppling over. And so he is now faced with often the need to put in steel beams spanning across the nearest support on the far side into the wall here, and a trimmer beam up above here to support the weight of the chimney over. You can see a very little rough isometric here. Here are your steels spanning between supports built into the party wall and into structural support on the far side, and your trimmer across supporting the cut end of the chimney breast. And that's just put in place. It's dry packed, rammed and dry packed quite nicely. And that will then provide you with the support you need.
Okay, that's showing beams coming out perpendicularly to the chimney breast. Could you have a situation where you have a steel support actually running underneath? Because I've come across that scenario where it's actually running underneath the chimney breast wall, and then bearing onto internal load bearing and external load bearing walls.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have that scenario.
If you've got cross walls in this direction, and
Yes.
perhaps a rear wall in this direction, then again
Yes.
you can span between
You can
these
span
two walls.
between, yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's just providing sound and competent support to the chimney breast on your side.
Right. So it is very important to dry pack
Very much so.
the gap between the supporting steel channel and the actual chimney, the bottom of the chimney breast wall.
Yes, that's right. The spans here are relatively short, so you don't need to worry quite so much about deflection as you might do in a larger floor opening. So ordinary dry
Okay.
pack, properly rammed in place, will do the job.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. So Nick, there will be a cutting into the party structure for the insertion of these steel channels, these steel beams.
Yes.
And we've covered that in the first presentation. We covered that in the loft conversion presentation.
Yes, that's
already.
right. The watchword always is care.
Take great care, absolutely, and don't go more than half the thickness of the wall,
Yes,
which is
that's
something we covered in that first module.
Yes.
The actual insertion of a gallow bracket support, I mean that would also be notifiable under the Party Wall Act, because you're going to be mechanically drilling into a wall and then fixing bolts for these brackets, aren't you, into the wall?
Yes,
so
that's right.
that's notifiable under the Act.
That's right. And one thing to be aware of, always remember that you're cutting into old brickwork, and so try and use resin bolts wherever possible rather than expanding bolts,
Yeah.
which are liable to crack a brick.
Right.
The resin bolts will give you a much better bond, but always get them tested, because
Yeah.
it's so easy for the resin to leak out, for the resin to be contaminated with dust, and etc. etc. Little handheld bolt testers, always worth the weight in gold when it comes to making sure that you've got a good bond into the brickwork.
All these operations will require building control approval in any case, wouldn't they? So,
Yes, that's right. There's structural alteration.
Yeah.
But building control, rely on your contractor to do the checks. Don't rely on building control to pick up the anything you need. The contractor should be aware of what he's doing, what checks he needs to make. The engineer, the surveyor perhaps will attend to watch the test being carried out.
Okay.
You've just got to be a little bit careful about existing buildings.
Just on the operational side of actually removing the chimney breast walls, and I've seen it in one or two YouTube videos, in fact, where they have used a drill bit to kind of slip in between, like a knife going through a cake, to slip in between the junction of the chimney breast where it goes into the party wall, and then try to prise away the brickwork. Is that something that you think is a reasonable way of operating in terms of removing the structure?
The risk of that is prying bricks away from the party wall itself.
Yes.
These bricks are good en masse, but they're quite loosely bonded into this old line mortar in many cases. So you're liable to pull elements of the structure away from the wall itself.
Right.
Ideally, you want to isolate using disc cutters or similar the brickwork and then carefully remove it by hand again.
Right.
No percussion tools.
Don't use percussion tools. Don't use drill bits to then try to push the bricks out. No, no. Again, like I showed in the previous presentation we did, you could end up displacing the brickwork on the other side of the party wall, causing damage to their decoration and plaster.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. I think we've wound up this particular presentation, so thank you very much for the presentation. And,
thank you.
Look forward to the next one.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. This has been brought to you by Arun Associates and William J. Marshall. We hope to be making further presentations to you in the near future. Finally, if you are planning any building works to your property or to a leased property, you will need to comply with building regulations and acquire the necessary consents.